Well, hello again, and today we're back on the Chevy truck. Now, as you can see, I've removed the side panels from the truck here. You can see the handbrake mechanism there under the chassis, which goes to the back wheels. It's a cable. Well, it's a mixture of actually cables and shafts, but that's not what we're looking at today. What we're actually going to look at is the missing panel, because I think I've said to you before, there seems to be a lot of rust on this vehicle, and I'm still trying to get to grips with the history of it. There's definitely something not quite right. But before we go out and have a look at the restoration of one of these side panels, I just want to show you something so that I can have your comments and thoughts on it. So I'm just lied down pretty much under the truck now, because I'm trying to get you a picture of inside these box sections. The surface on here just feels as though as though it's been sandblasted basically, or grip blasted or something like that. It's got, it feels rough, like, a bit like the surface of emery paper or something like that. But the surface, I don't think it's painted, but it does look almost like a silver metallic sheen on it. What I'm going to attempt to do is, I've got some of these special chemical treatments which I'm going to spray into any metalwork, any box section I can see. I'm going to spray it with this chemical which is designed to neutralise and stabilise the rust. And then when I've done that, again, I don't think I'm going to be able to paint up in here because these are really long thin channels. I'm going to effectively just wax oil it. I say wax oil, I'm going to use an oil coating. I'm probably going to use Dinitrol rather than wax oil, although I've just spent a load of money on wax oil. Everybody, when you go on all the forums, everybody seems to think wax oil is a work of the devil, so spent even more money and bought this Dinitrol chemical, which people seem to rate better than wax oil. So, I think I said in the last video what I'm basically trying to do, and I suspect I am going to be onto a little bit of a losing battle. Wherever I can find these areas that don't have any paint, I'm trying to patch them up and kill any rust on them, and I'm trying to put a coat of either paint or hot wax on them just to try to limit the corrosion. I'm afraid we're never going to stop it, are we? Not unless we, I guess we strip the vehicle back to bare steel and have a go from scratch. And, well, to be quite honest, maybe that's the best thing to do, but it's not something I want to do at the moment. So I'm just standing back a bit now, and these are just the two box sections that we were looking into. So there's basically, starting from the right hand side near where the fuel cap is, there's a box section there, then there's one in the middle next to the wheel arch, and then right at the back of the vehicle there's another of these box sections. And basically I think I'm going to have to do the same treatment on them all to try and clean them out and neutralise the rust on them. I'm afraid the camera's really not going to focus, but this is just looking from the top of the truck now into these box sections, and as you can see, they're very, very deep, and there's absolutely no way I'm actually going to be able to get any tools in there to actually clean them out properly. So about the only thing I can do is try to spray something into them to neutralise the rust and hopefully try and stop it getting any worse. So we just have a look at the handbrake mechanism there. About half the length of the vehicle, the handbrake is controlled via rods. Sorry, I call it handbrake. It's probably better to call it a parking brake. And there's a pedal on the floor of the vehicle, and you press that pedal and it pulls a rod, and then the rod acts on this arm, which is about halfway along the chassis here, and then it goes onto a cable, and then the cable attaches to the rear drum, and that's what operates the parking brake shoes. Okay, so here's one of those side panels that I said I'd removed, and you can see into it now. This is the reason I've removed it, because of all the surface rust which is visible on it. So I'm pretty sure that there is actually there's no primer on here. There's been no attempt to actually paint this at all. I think it's just been painted on the visible side. And there's been no effort to actually treat the inside of the panel here, and that's why it's going rusty. And I'm guessing left to its own devices, it will just totally rust through here. Also see here, there's in the past there's been quite a poor repair, and this is something that I would probably want to put right myself. I would actually want to weld some new metal in, but I think if I attempt to do that at this stage, I'm just going to end up burning all the paint off it, which at the moment I don't want to do, because the paint looks really good. I think a lot of the paint will fall off fairly quickly because, as I said earlier, I don't think it's primed properly. But until, you know, the paint system does start to fail, I think I will leave it. And maybe when I am thinking about having the car repainted, then will be the time to actually cut this out and weld in some proper repair sections. But for now, again, it just comes back to I want to do this rolling restoration. I just want to keep the vehicle in a reasonable condition and get it drivable for the next few years so I can enjoy it. So I think what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try to remove this layer of paint so I can put this this chemical on, which is hopefully going to neutralise the rust. So I'm going to use some power tools to do that, but I don't want to risk damaging, I was going to say damaging the good paint, I use the word good loosely. I don't want to damage this paint, so I'm going to mask up the good side and put some edge protection on here, just some masking tape, and then we're going to go ahead and hit this with a variety of sanding implements. Okay, well, this should just stop it getting scratched while I'm working on, that's what I'm hoping for. So this is P80 grit paper, let's just see what it does. Well, I've been banging away for the last hour with various abrasives. I've had a flapping wheel on it, which removes some of the paint. I've had a power file on it, which can get into some of the nooks and crannies. But probably one of the best ones is this kind of rubberized wheel. It's kind of a rubber wheel, and it's got bits of grit embedded in the rubber, and that's really quite effective at stripping the old paint and stuff like that. It can actually also get into a lot of the tight places, you know, like that lip under there. It'll actually get in there, so that was quite good. So I've done one of them and I'm completely exhausted now. I've got most of the paint off, I think, and this stuff that I'm going to paint on top of it says that it's fine. It's designed to go on top of light rust, so I'm hoping that I can just clean this. I'm going to degrease it and then paint some on. But before that, this is one of the side panels, but unfortunately I've got one on the other side of the vehicle to take off and do now, so yeah, I better get on with that. But to be honest, I'm already shattered. Well, I've cleaned all the surface rust away and degreased the panel using alcohol, and now what I'm going to use is this aqua steel. And what this aqua steel is, it's not really a coating, it's not a paint, it's a treatment. What we're going to do is we're going to paint some of this onto the onto the slightly rusty metal, and it's some kind of a chemical reaction. I don't exactly know what the chemistry is behind it, but in theory it's going to neutralise the existing rust, and it's going to provide us a surface that we can then paint onto. Oh, that's the idea anyway. So I'm guessing it's, I think it's some kind of chemical which is in a latex binder. Now, according to the instructions, all we have to do is paint it on and then leave it 24 hours to completely curing, and then we can overcoat it with something. And again, I'll probably just put something like red oxide primer on it or something like that. Anyway, let's give it a go. So it looks a little bit like frothy milk, and it doesn't smell of anything. And it smells a little bit like PVA. And I believe it's a water-based product, so I don't think it's particularly toxic as these things go. So I think one thing I am going to try and do is get plenty of this stuff in. It's really thin, so I'm hoping that it's going to be able to run into all the nooks and crannies, if you like, and you know, basically do its job in places that, you know, you can't actually normally get to. I think one thing that you can do with this kind of stuff is you can spray it into cavities in your chassis, and they recommend that you spray it into cavities before you use you know, wax oil type products. So I think I'm going to be doing some of that in the truck. Just within the cab section there is quite a few like internal boxes, and I do want to wax them. I'll put some of these, you know, Dinitrol wax into them, but I think before I do that I will try and spray some of this stuff in, hopefully to kill any rust that's in there already. Or it doesn't really, I guess, yeah, kill it, is that the right word? Neutralise it is maybe a better word. Yeah, this stuff is actually, I poured out far too much. I probably put about 1/8 of a cup in here, but the way it's going on so thinly, like I say, it is like the consistency of milk as well. I think I've actually poured out, you know, much more than I actually need. And it seems to be where it's actually touching the metal or the rust, it does seem to be, I think it's going from white to turning kind of a blue colour. I'm guessing that is the that's the chemical reaction that we're looking for. Because it's a chemical treatment, I don't think there's anything really to be gained by, you know, really putting this stuff on as thickly as possible. I don't think you gain anything, because I think almost once it's done its job of neutralising the rust, once this chemical reaction has taken place, I don't really think you know, the actual binder, the latex on it, is really probably doing very much. In fact, I wonder what the purpose of the latex is. I wonder if it's just to give it some I don't know, temporary covering, or maybe it's to give the top coat of paint something to actually cling to. I'm not exactly sure. There's a few bits on here where I wasn't able to get rid of the paint, unfortunately. I just couldn't get in to do it. Okay, so that's one piece coated. Can you see, have I missed any? Probably. I think I'll paint the edges first, that might be a little bit more systematic. I might be imagining it, but I think I can smell something, kind of a little bit of an eggy smell now, so maybe it's I wonder if there's some reaction with the metal going on that's giving off sulphur dioxide or something like that. It's either that or I'm farting. I might be trumping, not sure. Yeah, it could be me that's trumping a bit. I'm just trying to brush it in well. I'm sure it maybe doesn't need it, but I'm just kind of hoping I can work it into any nooks and crannies or pitting within the steel. Okay, So I've finished those 2 panels now, and I've got to admit, I wish I hadn't poured so much out, because I'm going to have to waste this. I'm going to have to throw it away, because it does warn you not to put the chemical. Don't put it back into the container, because if there is any rust particles in here, and I pour it back into the main tub of chemical, it'll react with it, and well, I guess it'll ruin the potency of the brew. So yeah, I'm going to have to throw this away. Right, so according to the instructions, there's nothing more we can do now. We're just going to leave this for 24 hours. So we'll see this when it's cured. Well, both of these panels have been left overnight, and hopefully you'll be able to make out on the camera that they've well, the rust areas have kind of gone very, very black. So I think that's the reaction that we were looking for. Whereas you can see some light brown areas there, which I think are just where the metal was bare. Where it was bare bright steel, the chemical hasn't reacted, so all we're seeing there is kind of the latex binder. But what we really want to see is this black coating here, because that means it's reacting with the rust. Now, I read the instructions, and it said if you're using a solvent-based paint, you've got to leave these for 24 hours before we put in any type of primer on it. So I think what we'll actually do is we'll probably just leave these for a few days now, and when we come back we'll maybe put some primer on. I have had some problems with this car because I've used a variety of different paints and I really didn't think it through, so I've been having problems with some of the paints eating through the primers or reacting and stuff like that. So that'll be the next job, to prime them, and probably just these are going to be hidden beneath the car. These, so I think once they're primed, I'm just going to paint some grey gloss paint onto them. I'm just, they don't have to look splendid. I just want to stop them rusting. That's all I'm trying to do. Well, I've just spent about the last half hour underneath the vehicle, and this rear cross member, it's quite heavily corroded internally. Now, it's actually made out of quite thick steel, so it hasn't rusted through anywhere, but obviously I'm concerned that the corrosion over time is going to keep going, and eventually this big thick cross member will fail, although I suspect it would take a lot of years. But if you see the size of my hand here, I can't get my hand in to get the rust out, and I can't get a wire brush in either. I mean, there's the smallest wire brush I've got, and you can sort of get it in a little way, but you can't get it in very far. So what I've come up with is, I've got this, said falling over, have another go. What I've got here is, this is the wire brush that you would normally put on a drill, and I can get it in here, and I can just kind of scrape away a little bit, and I'm removing the mud and stuff like that. Hopefully you can see it, some stuff is falling out of it. I guess ideally I would maybe jack this high up or take it somewhere, and I'm guessing I could have it steam cleaned underneath, but to be honest I'm not sure I really want that amount of water being sprayed over it at the moment. So all I can do is scrapey scrape. I'm hoping that all I need to do is remove any of the worst flakes of rust, so we can put that rust neutralising fluid in, which I'm just hoping that that's going to just stop the corrosion getting any worse, at least for a little while anyway. So that's today's job. I'm not going to make you sit and watch me do this, because well, it's probably quite boring. I'm sure you won't enjoy it, because I'm not enjoying it either. Well, it's a few days later now, and I've sprayed some of that rust converting chemical into various crevices within the car body. And I thought what we could do is use this bore scope that I bought many years ago. I say I bought it many years ago. I think I bought it about 2 or 3 years ago, but I'm afraid my wife confiscated it for lewd and inappropriate behaviour. So I've only just got it back. But I thought what we could do is switch it on. We can poke this into some of the holes and have a look if the chemical has penetrated where we wanted it to. So in theory it's got a memory card option on it, and I should be able to record some video on this. I don't think the video is particularly high quality, but let's give it a go. So you can see that little screen there, so can I don't know, can I poke up my nose? That's quite horrible, isn't it? Or why is it when you get older you can definitely get hairier? No, yeah, those nose hairs are really going on, aren't they? Okay, well we've got two box sections here which have sprayed that chemical inside, and if it's worked, they should have got a black colour. So how do we switch the actual record function on? Is it that? So wherever we see the black colour, in theory that means that that's the stuff that it's converted, and I think the brown colour may be that that might be some form of rust, but I think actually more what it is, it's just the latex, it's just the binder in the material that we can see. Obviously some of these box sections are a little bit hard to get at and maybe prepare properly, so it could be that it hasn't quite combined properly. What I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and use a long radiator brush with some epoxy primer, and hopefully I can get some epoxy primer at least at the lower part. I don't think I'm going to be able to get it very far in, that's the problem. Again, there's a little lip under here. Again, I might be able to get some epoxy material into there. I'm not sure. I can't really do much else. Let's have a look at this one. So it looks like the chemical's definitely done its job in some areas, but I think the brown some of the brown splodges are maybe indications that the material, hasn't converted. We can see there the black material is definitely fully converted, and where it's brown, I think that maybe that means it hasn't converted as well as it could have done. Now that might be because it wasn't rusty enough, because this stuff is only designed to convert rust. So it could be that it didn't fully convert it, or we may also be just looking at some of the residue. I'm not exactly sure, but it's one of them things. It's not a perfect science, and I can only do what I can do. Hopefully I've improved things and not made them any worse. I use the needle descaler in this hole here, and then all I could do was get a wire brush, and I put it on the end of a piece of rod, and I pushed the wire brush in, and I managed to scrape out a lot of the dirt and the flaky rust and the rubbish. And although there was a lot of rust inside it, there was still a fair thickness of metal. And then I sprayed the rust converter inside, and it's looking pretty black inside there. So the fact it's gone black means that it has done its job of trying to stabilise the rust and convert it into this neutral material. So I'm hoping that is going to hold the corrosion at bay for a few more years. Once you've actually sprayed this stuff in it, the next thing to do is spray it with like a cavity wax, which I'm going to use. There's various ones you can use, including wax oil, but I think I've decided to use Dinatrol. Now, Dinatrol costs about 3 times as much as wax oil, so on that basis, I'm sure you agree it must be better because it costs 3 times as much. Yeah, whatever.